After much deliberation, I have decided to sell my projectors and replace them with the triple screen setup. But why, you may ask? Well, both setups have their pros and cons. While screens offer better image quality, I have previously leaned towards the amazing immersion of projectors and a curved projection surface. But what made me change my mind was practicality. During the last year, I have had less time and less energy for gaming, and when I had the time, I usually realized that I would have to recalibrate the projectors again, and ended up doing something else. The issue is my room. It's small with low ceiling. I have the projectors mounted on the ceiling, but an old wooden house like this basically lives, and there's also room above me here. And even a small movement can produce coasting in the middle. I could perhaps try to build a sturdy metal frame, but with the room available, it would be a hassle. Same goes with trying to fit a third projector, so I could move the seams away from the center. In the end, I ended up being somewhat anxious every time I turned up the setup and waited some time for the projectors warm up to see if they were still properly calibrated. Since I have 2 young kids, wife, my career, this house, other hobbies, and also I'm trying to finally get back in some sort of shape after several years and be healthier, I decided that the stress-free approach was much better. So instead of having an amazing setup that I don't use, I'd much rather have, well, still amazing setup that I do use. Also, games like Flight Simulator or Condor work better with multi-screen setups. First step in this project is to basically take the cockpit apart and then put the projectors for sale. But the cockpit itself is basically designed with this in mind. While it feels a bit sad after all the work I put into the projector setup, at the same time I'm excitedly awaiting to be able to play the simulators without the extra hassle. And at least the image quality will be so much better. And yet again I ended up utilizing child labor. But I'm training him to become my Scorpio scanner, so I guess this is just part of the apprenticeship. And with the magic of editing, we can skip to the future where the screens have arrived. Props to the Finnish post this time, fast and flawless delivery. And I also wasn't worried anymore if the 75-inch screens were big enough for the room. I went with TCL's 75-inch 4K televisions. Partly because they were 40% off and they also have really thin bezels. 85-inch seemed a bit too big for the room and a lot more expensive. These aren't as tall as my curved screen was, but the total screen area will increase a bit. These are not perfect gaming monitors with 60Hz panels, which is the same refresh rate as the projectors were. But let's be realistic. I'm not going to lose a single dogfight in space or in air because I have 60Hz screens. I'm going to lose them because I suck. But first I need TV stands. I considered building them myself from scrap wood, but then I realized that it would be a lot of unnecessary work for subpar results. And after the TV stands were assembled, it was time for the televisions themselves. The package says that this is 2% job and I tend to agree. Also, the room isn't tall enough for me to take this package off the proper way, so I just opened one side. And in the hindsight, it would have been helpful to open actually the right side, not this one. And once again, one of those 2% jobs, but in the end this isn't that heavy, only 18 kilos, which happens to be exactly my rocking backpack weight at the moment. And I'm quite tall, 192 centimeters, so I was able to pull it off quite safely. Then I just had to repeat this 2 times and I was ready to continue with the project. The alignment is kind of a challenge with this sort of stands, so I was able to make it good enough by using just small seams here. It's not perfect, but it will get the job done. Also, the ritualistic feeling of the protective film isn't probably as satisfactory with these as it would be with smaller consumer electronics. And once the televisions were ready and cables connected, it was time to start carrying the cockpit back in. And here I ran into one issue that I kind of expected, but it ended up being much worse than I could have imagined. The cockpit didn't fit in place because of the legs of the TV stands, but this was nothing a jigsaw couldn't solve quickly. Also, I figured this would be a great time to improve the cable management, so I printed just a bunch of these things and also ran out of black filament while doing it. And back again carrying stuff in with my older son and assembling the cockpit. This cockpit disassembly and assembly process usually takes a lot more time than you might expect, even though I kind of designed it for this, but still a lot of stuff to just put in right places and a lot of wires to route and make sure everything is working properly. Once everything else was in place and all the televisions working properly, it was time for one last push of this project. My first quick impression of the setup is actually quite positive compared to what I expected. When I'm concentrating on the game, I really do not notice the seams, and like I mentioned in the beginning, I really hope that this allows me to play these simulators more often, because there won't be that much of hassle and calibration stuff. What you can expect from me in the near future is starts and gameplay video, because when I make some major changes into my setup, that's the first thing I want to do. And it will be interesting to see what sort of videos I can actually make. I know that the end product won't be as nice as with the 180-degree screen, but I think I can come up with something nice. Also, I'll be making one video about my experiences and comparing the curved screen projector setup to this one. And next year I hopefully can continue with my next cockpit project. So if that sounds interesting, don't forget to subscribe and hope to see you next time.
There are multiple hostiles inbound.